This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Throughout the nation and around the globe, from his heart to yours, it's Dear James Live on the radio, here on the Contact Talk Radio Network, bringing you intuitive insight, answers, and advice to your life questions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dear James Live on the radio, here on the Contact Talk Radio Network. I'm your host, Dear James, and today we are going to be tackling the power of forgiveness. And let me just say right off the bat that I understand this is a less than easy or challenging topic, forgiveness, because it means that we have to expose ourselves, and that is never an easy task. We don't always want to look at our own responsibilities or missteps and ownership of things. So I understand that this is a challenging topic. However, I am going to invite you right up front at the top of the show to have the courage to call in, have the courage to be vulnerable, have the courage to expose yourself in this emotional way, because it is the only way that you release things. It's the only way that you transcend that which you're holding on to. And when people, you don't want to give away your power is really what I want to say to you. You want to ensure that you have the power and the ability to transcend that which holds you in place. And so the power of forgiveness is a challenging one. But again, I'm going to ask you to have the courage to call in and talk about what you might need in terms of forgiveness, what you might be trying to forgive others for. The lines are open. It's going to be 877-230-3062 is the number you'll call into. And we're going to progress through the show and take your calls live regarding the power of forgiveness. So before we begin on the power of forgiveness, I've been talking to you about 5 foundational life elements. And imagine, if you will, that you are a 5-pointed star. And at the base of this star, and much like when you visualize a star, there are 2 points that the star rests upon if it's sitting vertical, or standing vertical, if you will. And the two base points on the star are surrender and gratitude. Those 2 elements are your base points. And upon them, if you are able to master those elements, the power of surrender and the power of gratitude, then you stand on a very firm foundation. When you move up the star, you have, of course, what I call the wing points. You have the 2 points of the star that are left and right. And these 2 wing points are permission and forgiveness. And imagine, if you will, that if these 2 points, these wing points, are your arms outstretched, and you see that if you give yourself permission in life to do what you wish to do, to be whom you wish to be, and then by giving yourself forgiveness or giving others forgiveness, your world is so expansive you can't possibly wrap your arms around it. That's the beauty of these wing points, permission and forgiveness. And at the very top of the star is your intention. What do you intend your life to be? What do you intend this moment to be? And by leading with your intention and realizing that that's what it is every moment of every day, you're allowing the universe to direct you. You're allowing yourself to see that by choosing to live by your intentions, it leads you. And that is immeasurable. And all of this then sits, and there's 2 other elements that we will cover that I'm going to go into later in the year with you. But once we've mastered these 5 foundational life elements, sitting upon the 2 wings, if you will, the wing points, are the power of faith and the power of now. And you can really only achieve the power of now and the power of faith by having mastered and living by these other 5 foundational life elements. And all of this culminates in a greater sense of love. Love for life, love for yourself, love for others, love for this moment, i.e., love for every opportunity, every challenge, living in the now, love for just being. So, as we progress through these 5 elements, and later in the year, as I said, we will address the power of now and the power of faith, you'll see how, as you start practicing each one of these elements, it becomes easier and easier. And you will see how your life just changes. So, very exciting to talk about the power of forgiveness. And as I said at the top of the show, it's a challenging topic. It's a challenging, it's challenging. It's just the better way to put it. It's challenging. It's a personal journey. Forgiveness is always a personal journey. And there's no magic formula. There's no, if I do steps A, B, and C, voila, there's forgiveness. It doesn't work that way. Because forgiveness in and of itself is predicated upon that there's been a wrong. Some wrong has been perpetrated against someone, and thereby forgiveness is required. Or you've perpetrated the wrong against someone else. It's a two-way street in that aspect. So it requires us to look at ourselves. And it also requires us to look past what the perceived aggression is in order to move to forgiveness. So with that, I want to lead off and tell you or talk to you about a story, if you will, an analogy, a story about forgiveness. And imagine, if you will, a pearl contained within an oyster. And I know it's going to be a little bit funny until we get into it, but a natural pearl begins its life inside of an oyster shell. And if you think about the pearl that's inside the oyster shell, that pearl is the hidden lesson or gift. And our soul, our spirit, is the oyster's shell. And when an intruder, such as a grain of sand or a bit of floating food or some aspect like that, penetrates the protective layers of the oyster, it causes an irritation. Well, think of that grain of sand or that bit of floating food as the aggressor or the trespasser in human terms. Think of it as the mental or physical abuser, the murderer, the philanderer, the inconsiderate friend. And that irritant, if you will, that intruder, slips between the protective layers of the 2 shells of the oyster, which is a type of mollusk. And it's a protective layer that covers the mollusk's organs, also called the mantle. So when you appropriate that to or compare that to the human, you understand that those protective layers, that mollusk, for us as humans, is our better judgment, our defenses. That somehow we allowed an intruder, an irritant, a trespasser, an aggressor, to slip by us, and into our life they came. And all of a sudden, we're going to then have to deal with what this irritant is causing. Now, in order for the oyster to protect itself, it quickly begins covering this uninvited visitor, this piece of sand, this particle of food. And it starts layering itself with what's called nacre, the mineral substance that fashions the mollusk's shell. So layer upon layer, it starts protecting itself. And throughout its protection, also known as the mother of pearl, it coats this grain of sand until it's an iridescent gem-formed article, if you will. Now, humans don't have layers of nacre. We have something far, far better. We immediately opt to anger, hurt, resentment, fear, bitterness, revenge. These are all the things that humans immediately go to in terms of protecting themselves when there's an intruder, when there's an aggressor. The problem, however, is those elements only bring greater and greater irritation. But they bring that irritation not to the intruder, but to ourselves. So if, however, we as humans sought to wrap ourselves in forgiveness, then, much like the oyster, a great and polished pearl, or pearls of wisdom, as I'd like to call, insight and evolution or transcendence, that is then what we begin to reveal. So what I'm trying to say to you is that there's a very strong analogy about the fact that oysters contain these hidden elements. And these hidden elements, when you look at them from the outside, when you look at an oyster coming fresh out of the ocean or fresh water, they're unsightly, they're unseemly, they're rough and jagged and not attractive at all. But what's hidden within them is something that you have to work for. It doesn't readily show itself. It doesn't readily show you the hidden gift that's inside. And it's much the same for human beings. On the outside, when we face an aggressor or we face a trespasser and we feel aggrieved, we immediately put up our defenses and we immediately go to everything that they've done wrong, and we pull out the anger and the hurt and the resentment and the fear and the bitterness and the revenge, and we protect ourselves. And then we stop. We stop at that point, or we continue on with more and more anger, more and more hurt, more and more. We keep reliving it. And the only person that's hurting is ourselves. The aggressor not even fazed, doesn't even come into the equation, because they're not holding our anger or our resentment. We are. So it's an amazing thing. An oyster takes approximately 6 to 8 years to make a single pearl. Yet imagine, if you will, how many pearls of wisdom you would accumulate in your lifetime if you were willfully choosing forgiveness over anger, forgiveness over hurt, forgiveness over fear, forgiveness over resentment, forgiveness over revenge, forgiveness over bitterness. It takes a lot of effort. It takes sometimes moments or sometimes lifetimes to forgive. However, the faster you forgive, the more pearls of wisdom you will reveal to yourself. All of these people that come into our lives, we've somehow invited or attracted them to us. We've invited them in. And they are a mirror for us to see and to experience what we chose to experience. The gift, the pearl inside, is when we go deeper, when we go past what's on the surface. Go past what was the transgression and look for the gift. It's a very, it's challenging work. And I'm not going to tell you that it's not. And especially the greater degree of the aggression or the trespassing, if you will, the greater those degrees are in those elements, the more work it's going to take for you to see, why did this happen? What role did I play in it? What role am I playing now? And I keep relating it back to the oyster. We can't possibly know what's hidden inside this very unsightly, not very pretty, hard, rough shell. It looks as though it has no value. And yet hidden inside, quite frankly, quite literally, is a priceless gem. So we're going to delve deeper into humans being oysters and the benefits of forgiveness being these pearls of wisdom. I know it's a difficult topic, but I do want you to call in. I challenge you to come and call in and open yourselves. It's an amazing, amazing process to discuss forgiveness. And the number you'll call is 877-230-3062. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to continue with the power of forgiveness. You're listening to Dear James Live on the radio here on the Contact Talk Radio Network. And I also, before I go to break, want to say to you, if you're too shy, if you're worried about calling in, then please go to DearJames.com and click on Ask and submit your question there. And I will answer your question in writing and or answer it and discuss it live on the air. So that's another option for you. But again, we're going to go to break now, and we'll be back after this message. Thank you.
The desire to be more consciously enlightened is innate. Do you feel there's more to life? If so, find the resource that's right for you by going to DearJames.com/resources. You are the reality you create. Make it a great one. When you ask a question, the universe hears you, and in a multitude of ways, they seek to communicate with you to provide the intuitive insight, answers, and advice you seek. From serious to silly, monumental to mundane, there's nothing the universe can't cover. Maybe the insight you receive is exactly the affirmation you were looking for. Then again, it may just give you a whole new perspective on things. And that's the beauty of the universe. Submit your question to Dear James at DearJames.com and click Ask.
Available for private, individual, group, and corporate consultations, Dear James will provide you with the intuitive insight, answers, and advice to your life questions. Schedule your consultation by going to www.DearJames.com and click on Consultation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dear James Live on the radio here on the Contact Talk Radio Network. Today we are discussing the power of forgiveness. Not an easy topic, a challenging topic, but hopefully an insightful topic, because without it, we get stuck and we harm ourselves, and that is never a good place to be. So I want to go through a couple of items where I talk about forgiveness is. And forgiveness is a journey. Sometimes it's short, and sometimes it's lifelong or eternal. And I want to talk to you about that because as I was preparing for today's show, it came to me as I was meditating and so forth that someone's passed on. Someone's already, we believe that we're not able to forgive them or that they won't hear our forgiveness. And I'm very much a firm believer in past lives, future lives, or next lives, i.e. reincarnation and so forth. And it was very strong that when we forgive, whether that person is here on the earth plane with us, they're still here in the physical form, or they have moved on, so to speak, they have transcended, that power of forgiveness transcends all time and space, because you don't want to come back and repeat these lessons. And forgiveness is really opportunities to experience lessons and transcend them. That's really what they are. So don't stop or get stuck with the fact that whomever it may have been that was the aggressor or that hurt you or harmed you, and they're no longer physically living, don't let that stop you from forgiving that person or those persons and yourself. Give that gift of forgiveness to yourself, and then you won't repeat it. You won't relive it again. Forgiveness is a one-way street, and I want to clarify that in a minute, as it is not dependent upon others to achieve its desired destination, and that desired destination is peace. You and you alone hold the power of forgiveness. You hold it within, and you only need to grant it to yourself. And grant it. Forgive the person. They may never speak to you again. But by forgiving them or forgiving yourself, you've achieved the destination. And that was peace. You're looking for peace. You're looking for resolution. That's a gift you can give yourself. Forgiveness is also freedom. It's a releasing of self from this self-imposed prison of anger, hurt, resentment, bitterness, revenge, all by the one who is withholding it. And that's you. You're the one withholding it. So if you want freedom, if you want peace from an issue or a person, then you're the one that has to release it. I hear all the time, well, if they'd only, and if they'd only, and if they'd only, and if, and if, and if they. That's looking out. It's not about them. It's about you seeing the pearls of wisdom as to why you have invited this experience, this intruder, and then what do you do to free yourself from it? Very powerful. Forgiveness is not always easy. And I think that's just an understatement because, as I said at the top of the show, no, it's not. Forgiveness is not easy sometimes. Sometimes it's as simple as pie. And sometimes it's a souffle. And if anyone's ever tried to make a souffle, you know, if you open the oven too soon or somebody speaks at the wrong pitch, the whole thing just collapses in the oven and you look at this pile of guck in a pan being baked, I should say. So realize that it's not always easy, yet undeniably it's necessary. You cannot enjoy true happiness without first embracing forgiveness and then surrendering to it. That's huge. You have to embrace forgiveness and then surrender to it. So one other point that I'd like to do or talk about is forgiveness is freedom from judgment of self and others. So that is huge. That is an absolutely huge statement because it's freedom from judgment. If we stop at the judgment, we don't find the pearl. Judgment is that hard shell, that ugly, unattractive shell. Then all of a sudden, when we stop the judgment and we look for the gift, then we find it. I'm going to go to Pam from Central America now. Hi, Pam. How are you?
Hi, James. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
James, I'm listening to your show, and I need a bit of advice. I'm wondering, let's say you have someone in your life, and you're really, really trying to forgive them, but you are in constant interaction with them, and it's as if they're poking you with a stick constantly. What do you recommend that we do to try to, keep that spirit of love and happiness going? And you almost have to stay in a continual state of forgiveness.
Well, that's very true. And I guess the first point I would make is it's easy to stop at this person is continually being difficult, challenging. Let us even say evil. If they're constantly coming at us, then the place, there's two issues here. One is then to look past what that is on the surface. This person's antagonistic behavior and less than good intentions and so forth, or even, ill intentions, are masquerading a far deeper issue with that individual. And so when you realize that this person is in your life and that you either have a choice to deal with them or not. And one of the things that I would say, Pam, is that when you look at this person's underlining issues, when you go deeper, you see them. And that oftentimes is even worse for the person because then they realize that you see them and they become more antagonistic and more ill-intentioned. And in terms of forgiveness then, or in the ways of dealing with this individual, is then you have the ability to look and never engage them in a way that feeds that negativity. It's very challenging. It's not easy. However, that person was placed there because it's also, what I also get is that you're getting pearls of wisdom of what not to be in life. You're getting a very strong lesson in what never to be and how to be better and different with this individual. And I would say in that regard, Pam, that I know it's a challenging position to be in. Love of self, love of this other person, but recognizing that people only treat you the way you allow them to. So by having a firm but loving position or stance with this individual, you can say thank you, but no thank you. Is that?
Yeah, I keep trying to think of this person's good qualities and trying to visualize them with love, but it is still, as you said, very, very challenging.
Well, absolutely, because ultimately this person looks like the nasty, hard, rough, awful shell.
Right.
And sometimes...
I'm not seeing the pearl, James.
I'm sorry?
I'm not seeing the pearl.
Right, and because the pearl may not be in that individual. The pearl might be in the wisdom that you're discerning from that individual.
Oh, great point.
that thereby, because these people are always placed in our lives to teach us. So again, that's why I go back to that person's, the forgiveness isn't about that person. The forgiveness is about ourselves and the pearls of wisdom we are getting from interacting with people that are harmful or that are mean or just hurtful and negative. Yes, but that pearl of wisdom is our gift, because we get to see them, we get to transcend them, and then we say, okay, I see you, I understand what this is, and I choose to say thank you, but no thank you.
So I just need to change my perspective a bit.
Exactly. Realize that the perspective is, the gift is yours. It has nothing to do with that person. Has nothing to do with that person. It's the gift you're giving yourself by releasing him.
Great.
By not letting him harm you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate it as well.
Okay. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Very important thing. And then I'm going to take our next caller. But very important point is when you can't see the pearl, as Pam just said, realize you're the pearl. You're the pearl. And the forgiveness is for you, not the other person. Let me go to Chris from Delaware. Hello, Chris.
Hello, James. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've been listening to your show, and I was just wondering, I had a situation a couple of years ago where I was terribly hurt. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional.
No,
I was terribly hurt, and I tried to figure out why these people hurt me. They were supposed to love me, and I got over that, trying to figure out why. I spent a lot of time trying to prove to them that what they thought of me wasn't true, and that didn't work. And I think then after that I went through where now I really don't feel anything, and I'm not sure if I worked through and forgave or if I've stuffed it, and I don't know how to figure that out.
Okay. Well, let me first start off with saying thank you for having the courage to call in and to be vulnerable, because that's a huge, huge step, Chris. And when we talk about forgiveness and these people that have harmed you, and one thing sometimes there's a lesson in the fact that the people that withhold something from us or intentionally harm us, when we continue to look outward for their apology or their acceptance, we're looking in the wrong direction. What you want to do, Chris, is look in, and not to say, look in like, what did I do wrong? What was it's not about blame. It's not about that. What it's about is, what did they teach me? And don't stop at anger or hurt, or that's the stuff on the surface. When you really start to see what I get, Chris, for you is that this was a place of value and self-worth, and these people, you gave them your power of identity. You allowed them to define you. And then when they harmed you or rejected you, you didn't know what to do. And they weren't supposed to do it, and you kind of gave yourself to them. And therein lies the lesson here. Your pearl of wisdom is that you're not to give other people your power or base your value by their acceptance or inclusion, or because the act of excluding you or diminishing you is the gift. It doesn't seem like it or feel like it because we stop. We stop too quickly at the surface. But if you look at at how, I'm basing my value and my self-worth and my inclusion and on these people, and they harmed me. What you really want to do is say thank you. Because they showed you, and everyone, I want to say, Chris, everyone plays their role brilliantly. The transgressor, the aggressor, always plays their role perfectly. Because if they don't, we won't learn the lesson. But over time, what you want to do is delve deeper and see, and that's why forgiveness is challenging, because it's not really looking at the other person. We're really forgiving ourselves for either having a belief or having given our power, or somehow we've given something and then we're harmed. It can be that we've given our innocence and then we're harmed. It's not that we're not to be innocent again. It's to realize, what lesson am I learning from this? And so I want to go back quickly just to say to you also, I don't think you've dealt with it. I know that you've moved on, but I don't think you gained the pearl of wisdom from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I had a gut feeling that was the case, but I just stashed it somewhere. And I think throughout, something you said made a lot of sense to me, because I think for a long time throughout my life, I've given my power to everybody else.
Right. And by doing that, you weaken yourself. You see, you become vulnerable, if you will, to their, is she in? Is she out? Is she good today? Is she not good today? You allow people this, we truly, people only treat you the way you allow them to. It's such a powerful statement. And so it's not to be bitter and angry and, and buck up like that. That's not what you're meant to do. What you're meant to do is really get to a place where you can say to them, thank you. Thank you for showing me that I gave up my power, or that I continually give up my power. And so these people came to your life and they played their role. And their role was to show you that you give up your power and that you let people define you or define your value. And that lesson, that pearl of wisdom, is now in your hands. What will you do with it?
So is that your suggestion, like where I would start? I really don't even know where to start.
What I would say to you is, and I often say this, but what I'm getting with you is, go back and look at, just sit quietly and peacefully and start looking at each time, and it's going to come to you. You'll get an emotion or a moment or something, a flash. You'll see it visually or you'll feel it emotionally, and look at each time you gave up your power and with whom you gave it up. And just start, and maybe keep a journal or some paper so where you can write these down. And all of a sudden you'll start seeing this thread, and the thread starts making a fabric. And you'll start seeing how all throughout your lifetime you gave up your power, or you allowed someone else to give you value, to determine your value. Once you start there, Chris, you'll start seeing, and the universe will start revealing to you, this is the lesson we wanted you to learn. This is the lesson that you chose to learn. You chose to learn the lesson of self-value, self-worth, self-identity. And start there. You'll be amazed at how that starts. It's going to show itself. It's going to start showing you each time. And, sometimes it's going to be okay, and sometimes it's going to be painful. But the point is to not stop. Keep looking, keep letting it come and reveal itself. And all of a sudden you'll be like, I've been doing this. And then you'll look at these people that were maybe the crowning point of hurt. You know, they like really knocked it home. You know, it's like knocking it out of the park.
Uh-huh.
And then you'll go, thank you. I got it. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. So are you saying the thank you is the first step towards the forgiveness?
Well, I would say to you, no, what I want you to do first is start realizing that's where you're going. But I think what they're saying to me with you is that you need to see
Available for private, individual, group, and corporate consultations, Dear James will provide you with the intuitive insight, answers, and advice to your life questions. Schedule your consultation by going to www.DearJames.com and click on Consultation.
Inspiration, love, acceptance. Who in this great universe inspires you? Whose love do you cherish? Who accepts you just for you? When was the last time you were inspired? When was the last time you told someone they're loved? When was the last time you accepted someone just as they are? Our words matter. Our deeds matter. Our lives matter. Inspiration, love, acceptance. Be the change you want to see in the world. www.DearJames.com and click on Inspiration.
When you ask a question, the universe hears you, and in a multitude of ways, they communicate to you the intuitive insight, answers, and advice you seek. Ask Dear James a question and experience the magic of the universe. Visit DearJames.com and click Ask.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I apologize, Mercury in retrograde, definitely having some fun with us and my connection today. But I want to go quickly back to Chris and just wrap up with Chris. Chris, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry for that. So anyways, Chris, what I really wanted to just say to you was start with these moments where you really focus on where in my lifetime, show me where in my lifetime I gave up my power or my value, my self-value and everything, and write these things down and who was there and what's happening and start seeing the thread. And by the time, and you'll know when it's time, you'll know when you've kind of seen them all. And then that's at the point where you start just visualizing and saying thank you to each one of those people for teaching you this valuable lesson, this pearl of wisdom of self-value and self-worth. And that's the gift you give yourself. It's the forgiveness you give yourself.
Okay, I will definitely try that.
Perfect. And if you have questions or follow up, please go to DearJames.com and just email me, and I'm happy to follow up with you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Chris. And I'm going to take my next caller, Deb. Deb,
Hello?
Are you there?
Yes. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Deb?
Good. My question today is, how do you handle when you think you've forgiven, but then something comes back up and makes you realize, well, maybe you haven't really forgiven? So how do you take that next step when you really thought you already had?
Well, that's interesting that you're asking that question, especially during Mercury in retrograde, because Mercury in retrograde is always a time when we redo, we look back, we go over things again. And so I think the universe is pretty clever that they do things when we think, I'm done with that, I've moved on, I've handled it. They go, no, here we go, and let me pop it back out to you. So I think the key in really forgiving, if you will, is, again, don't stop at the surface. What they're saying to you, and what the reason this is coming back to you, is because the universe is saying to you, hey, Deb, you haven't finished this. You haven't really even seen it yet. And that means look at the event and what happened, and look at all of the initial reactions and everything from all parties involved, if you will, and then step back from it for a second, and then say, okay, you're bringing this to me. I thought I was done with this, but you're bringing it back to me. What did I miss? And that's when you'll start seeing, this really wasn't about this. It was about this. That act or that transgression triggered this in me. Oh, that's what that really was. And by delving deeper with it, it's much like the pearl inside the oyster. We can't get, I don't know if, to all the listeners, but when you look at an oyster, it's clammed down tight. It is, you have to really work at getting to what's on the inside. It doesn't happen, easily or readily. It takes work. And so what I would say to you, Deb, is that this is an opportunity, much like Chris. I thought I was done with this, but maybe I'm not. It's an opportunity to really delve deeper, to get to what the real issue is or the real lesson, and then the liberation, the freedom, the forgiveness comes. Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm?
Absolutely. That was a very good analogy for me. Clamp down like that.
Yeah, it's a clamp down. I mean, because it just doesn't come. We all kind of like, I forgave them and I went on. Oh, it wasn't that. But yet it's still gnawing at us. It's still sitting in there. And it's because we haven't dealt with what the real lesson is. The real lesson is never on the surface, ever. It's never that they just make appointments with us and they break them. That's on the surface. What's underneath is how it makes us feel. When someone keeps making, dates with us, if you will, and they break them, we get mad and angry because, well, it's just, they're so disrespectful and they're inconsiderate and la 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 la. That's on the surface. What really is at play is they're questioning or infringing upon our self-worth, our self-value. So that person's being brought to us to show us self-value issues, self-worth issues. Has nothing to do with them being inconsiderate. I mean, that's just the play they're playing. That's the part in the play they're playing.
Right,
but
I see that.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how it all plays out, if you will.
So just dig deeper.
Yeah, dig deeper, meaning into self. Look in, not out. As I said to Chris, these people that were, that harmed her really had no, and with Pam, this gentleman in Pam's life, it's not about them. It's never about them. All they're doing is showing up and playing their part brilliantly. They are there to show us what our lesson is. And then it's up for us to delve deeper into ourselves, to see it, to go, that's what you're really trying to teach me. Or that, a better way to put it is, that's the lesson I really wanted to learn.
Right.
And you see, and then once we start doing that, then it's so easy to forgive them, because how can you not when you just gained all that insight and freedom? I mean, it's you see it's just mesmerizing, because then the freedom is, we're liberated. They're still inconsiderate, but we're liberated. You see,
and it's ultimately, I guess, what you're saying is it's within me and what it's bringing out in me, I guess.
Exactly. Because they are there as a mirror. They are there to show you the lesson. But you have to, if you look out, you're going to miss the lesson. When you stop and look in and say, how does this make me feel? Oh, it makes me feel devalued, or that I'm not seen, or that it makes me feel hurt, but why am I hurt? Because it's triggering this. It's always something for us within us. It has nothing to do with the other person. And I don't mean to berate that issue, but it's really a huge point. Forgiveness is about ourselves, not the other person.
Okay.
That's the gift. Thank you so much. Did that help?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Deb.
Uh-huh.
Bye-bye. So, some very interesting and amazing questions today and on awareness of forgiveness. So, remember, forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. It has nothing to do with the other people. It really doesn't. If they happen to also achieve forgiveness, then that's great. That's a double run, if you will. But forgiveness is about ourselves, and it's about figuring out why these intruders entered our lives, and from there, what was the lesson? And then to be able to be thankful about the fact that they played their part so brilliantly that we were able to learn our lesson and to forgive ourselves. To forgive, period. Very powerful. I want to thank all of you for listening today, and for our 3 callers, I want to say thank you for being raw and vulnerable and discussing the power of forgiveness. It's not an easy topic, I know, and it's definitely one that is worthy of your time and attention. So I thank you for that, and I want to just close with, remember, no matter where you are in the world, or whom you're with, or what you're doing, always remember to wrap yourselves in goodness. You've been listening to Dear James Live on the radio, here on the Contact Talk Radio Network. And Sheila and Hans are up next at the top of the hour. Stay tuned.
You've been listening to Dear James Live on the radio with your host, Dear James. Gain intuitive insight, answers, and advice to your life questions and so much more by tuning in next week and visiting DearJames.com.